Shalom.
Welcome to Shebrew as we study the Torah portion through the lens of relationships. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel so you get notified when we have new videos coming out, and also follow us on Facebook and on Instagram as well. So we're going to get started. Recap, we are digging into the Torah portion, looking at it through the lens of relationships. So relationships with our fellow humans. Any person that we encounter is going to be a stranger person or a friendship that we have or a close family member that we're acquainted with. Some type of relationship is what we have with these people. And how do we interact with them? Are we kind? Are we not kind? Do we treat them with respect or not respect? So we are digging into the scriptures to see what does God have to say about relationships and how can we bring this to focus into our everyday life. So we're going to dig in. Let's get started.
The portion we're looking at today is called Pinchas, which is the name of Aaron, his grandson. He would have been the third Kohen Gadol, or high priest of Israel, in line after his father Eleazar. At the time of this Torah portion, Eleazar is the high priest, and Pinchas, his grandson, has just done an act that saved all of Israel, and we covered that in the last Torah portion. So now we're basically picking up what he did to stop this activity that was going on, that was threatening all of Israel, and he got this Torah portion named after him. The theme that overrides this whole Torah portion is a theme of inheritance. It's also a theme of continuing in that inheritance. The things that we have to do to make sure that the inheritance continues. Now, obviously here what Pinchas did, or Phineas is what most of our English translations call him. What he had to do was he had to literally go and stab two people through with a spear to stop, to put a stop to this thing, to ensure that Israel was going to survive, that there would be a continuing, and that there would be an inheritance for Israel. But even as we continue through the portion, we get a census that's basically counting the new generation. We get an episode with the 5 daughters of Zelophehad that's about inheritance. We're going to touch on that. And then we get into the last 2 chapters, which are basically companion chapters to Vayikra, Leviticus 23, that explain some things about the offerings that are commanded in Leviticus 23, but they're specified in these 2 chapters. But even in the course of these 2 chapters, there's a great theme of continuing, of continuity. There's a word that occurs 17 times in these 2 chapters that you may be familiar with. The word is tamid, and it basically is talking about the continual or the daily sacrifice that was offered every day in the temple. But it's just this theme that interlocks throughout all of it is our inheritance, which is to continue, and the things that we need to do to make sure that our inheritance continues, and that has a lot to do with our relationships.
It does. It definitely does, because it's not just an inheritance in regards to financial, but it's a matter of, it's your legacy, it's your character, it's your integrity. What is that inheritance that you are continuing on?
Yeah. So the first place that we're going to get to, I gave you kind of a large overview of the chapters, but we're going to start in chapter 26, and we're going to read just verses 52 and 53.
Yep. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Among these the land shall be divided for an inheritance according to the number of names." So in regards to that, if we look at it, that can just be, inheritance, money, financial-wise, to the number of their names. But when we're looking at relationships, especially when you are looking at a potential spouse, what is it that you are bringing to the table? Not just what they are bringing to the table, but what are you bringing to the table? And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about possible possessions, a car, a house, an RV, your homestead. What is it that you are bringing to the table? But also your integrity, your character, your health. What is it that you are bringing, good and bad? Maybe you have some bad behaviors that you need to go ahead and break while you're single versus being married, because they get magnified when you're married. But it's a matter of what are you bringing to the table. It's always good to be able to look at the other person and be like, okay, what do they have to offer me? But am I a good spouse? Am I going to make a good wife? Am I going to make a good husband? Why would somebody pick me? And so, what is your inheritance? What is it that you're going to go ahead and bring? None of us are going to be perfect. We're not saying don't be perfect. We're just saying, what is it that you are able to go ahead and bring to that relationship?
And it's a total package, as Sarah was talking about. Another big part of the thing that you bring and the thing that your potential spouse is going to bring into what is going to become your marriage is your culture and your values.
Yeah.
And the way you grew up.
Yeah.
The way that you had certain roles modeled for you as a child, whether that is, mother and father and sister and brother, whether it is an employer or a pastor or policeman or whatever. It's the way that you see things.
Yeah.
Your culture, your values, that's part of your inheritance that you're bringing to the marriage. Yeah. And those are things that you need to talk about. Yeah. Those are conversations that need to be had just to have understanding, because without talking about things, without communicating, which we've tried to talk a lot about in these videos, without communicating and finding these things out, then you can't truly understand the other person and where they are. And there will be things that they do, or there will be things that you do that they interpret a certain, they may never even tell you what they're feeling inside, but they're interpreting things in a certain way because of the value and culture that they bring to the marriage.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just look at how all of us were raised. We're here in the United States. We live in Tennessee, but we're not from Tennessee here. The culture here is different than I grew up in Wisconsin, Illinois area.
I grew up in Mississippi.
Exactly. And so it's very different. Some people say pop, some people say soda, some say tomato, some say potato. I mean, you get those words, but you also get how were you raised? What is it that makes you makes you unique, and same thing in regards to the examples that we talked about from your parents. Maybe you were raised by just one parent. Well, that's going to be an influence on your life and what you think of marriage is going to be, good or bad. So you need to talk about those expectations. You need to talk about, what does this role look like to you? And maybe it's not the role that was demonstrated to you because you want it to be different. You want to raise your kids different than the way you were raised. Well, what does that look like? Pretend you have kids. What does that look like? Let's role play that out. Let's figure that out. Let's talk that through. And what is that going to be for us? Because each relationship is going to be different.
So that is just a little bit about inheritance.
Yeah.
And just things, beginning to talk about what you bring to the table when you are in your journey and you're in your quest to find that person that you're wanting to spend the rest of your life with. So this is a part of it, learning those things. There is a verse in Leviticus. It is 10:16, I do believe, and I don't know if you've ever looked at any of these things, but it's actually one of the middle points of the Torah. There's a few of them. There's a middle point of words, there's a middle point of verses, there's a middle point of letters. It's one of those. This is one of the midpoints of the Torah. And the middle is between a word that occurs twice right together. The word is darash. So you may be familiar with that word from the term midrash. But right there it says darash. And it basically gets translated as diligently searched. And that's part of what our job is in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Certainly when we're trying to develop this new understanding of the relationship that we have with the creator of the universe, and we realize, a lot of the things that we may have been doing in our previous life don't exactly line up with what he wants. Well,
Yes.
part of that job is to diligently search, like Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul says in Romans, to find out what is pleasing to him.
Yeah.
Well, there's another aspect of this, when you're trying to find a relationship with a spouse, where you are diligently searching just to find out the necessary information that you need. That's part of your job if you want to have a successful relationship.
Yeah, you have to discover them. You have to inquire about who they are. Why do they do the things that they do? What do you love about them? Why did you pick them? What was it that drew you together? And you need to discover that. You need to ask those questions. You need to dig deep and figure that stuff out.
Yeah. We're going to move into chapter 27 now, and we're going to read the first 7 verses there, 27, 1 through 7.
Then the daughters of
Zelophehad.
Thank you. The son of Heper, the son of Gilead, the son of
Machir,
the son of
Manasseh,
and the families of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, came near, and these are the names of his daughters: Machlah, Noah, and Hoglah, and Milcah,
and Tirzah.
Titzrah. And they stood before Moses and before Eleazar the priest and before the leaders and all the congregation at the doorway of the tent of meeting, saying, Our father died in the wilderness, yet he has not among the company of those who gather themselves together against the Lord in the company of Korah, but he died in his own sin, and he had no sons. Why should the names of our father be withdrawn from among the family, because he had no sin? Give us a possession among our father's brother.
And then Moses brought their case before Yah. And Yah spoke to Moshe, saying, The daughters of Zelophehad speak what is right. You should certainly give them a possession of inheritance among their father's brothers, and cause the inheritance of their father to pass to them. So this is, just a fascinating part of the scripture, where these 5 daughters of Zelophehad actually ask a question, and it causes Yah to give a law, a ruling that is recorded in the Torah. It's amazing. Hardly anybody has that in their repertoire, so amazing in and of itself. And there's a lot of things we could talk about in here, but we want to talk a little bit about rights, rights for inheritance and rights for all other things. We have to realize in the biblical culture, and even more so today, women have rights. And we are to respect their rights. We're to respect everybody, all people's rights that are afforded to them in the culture and the time they live in. You can't expect to enforce a set of rights on a person that is not in line with the authority structure or the governing authority in the place where they live. Just for example, if you live in the United States in the 21st century, then you can't expect a person to submit to the rights that were afforded to them in the first century Roman world. We live in a different time, we live in a different place. And in this 21st century United States, which is where most of us are, if you are watching this and you don't live inside the United States, well, you have to go by what your country affords you as rights. But most of us that are listening to these videos, we're inside the United States. And here in the 21st century United States, men and women have equal rights. One, you cannot own another person. You cannot force another person to marry or submit to your authority. They have the right to choose. A woman must choose to marry a man, and then must continually choose to submit to that man. He can't force her to marry him or to submit to him, at least not within the legal structure of the United States. We know that there's things that go on, but there's inside the legal structure of the United States, you can't force somebody to marry you, and you can't force them to submit to you. So the question that we want to ask, and we're going to get in a little bit more detail here in a moment, but why would a woman in our time and culture, that is in the 21st century United States, why would a woman choose to marry and submit to a man? what does he offer to her? And this is circling back to what we were talking about earlier. What are you bringing to the table, men and women as well?
Yeah.
But speaking specifically here to the men, what are you offering? Are you offering provision?
Yeah.
Are you offering protection? Are you offering love? Are you offering to be a father to their children, or a father to your children together? Are you offering to be a leader? Are you capable of being a leader? Are you admirable? I mean, are you a person that can be looked up to and respected? These are just some of the things that, like, are you going to be able to offer these things?
Yeah. Are you a good person that she could love you?
Yeah.
You know, or are you mean and you have hatred in your heart? You know, that is not going to make a good marriage. That is going to make a miserable marriage and a miserable wife and a miserable husband. So why put yourself through that? Why do that? Change. You know, get some help in change. You shouldn't feel forced to marry somebody, or just because, you know, you got pregnant, I'm forced to go ahead and get married to this person. No, you can raise that child on your own, or you can look at adoption. There's lots of options that are out there, you know, for you. You should not feel forced at all to be with somebody.
So really, you know, guys, you know, and women, because, you know, also, you know, women, what is it that you're bringing to the table?
Yeah.
You know, you have to consider this. You know, what are you offering? Both men and women. If all you're offering is good looks, that's
not going to get you far.
That's not going to last forever. So, you know, there's got to be more than that. Are you offering a great sense of humor? Okay, that's great, but it's got to be more than that.
Yeah.
What are these things that you're offering that are actually going to meet the needs of the other person? And if you haven't ever heard us talk about wants and needs and making your list, we've either got that video out there or we're going to make it.
We have that video out there.
You
We've
know?
talked a little bit about it in our different previous videos that we've done from the Torah portions, and we also have talked about it too on our Instagram account, so you can find it there.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, ladies, what are you doing that is going to, what are you offering, bringing to the table that's going to meet the needs of a husband? Husbands, men, what are you willing to bring to the table to meet the needs of your potential wife? Basically, you know, getting down to brass tacks, what I was going to get to here is functioning in your purpose.
Yeah.
If a man can function in his purpose, if you can bring that to the table, if you can function in your purpose, then that will allow your wife, a woman, to function in her purpose. Because a husband and a wife, they form, for lack of a better term, they form a machine. Okay? If one part of the machine isn't functioning in its purpose that it was created to perform, it's going to be impossible for the machine as a whole to fulfill its overall purpose. Just take, for example, a machine that's got, you know, like 15 different gears and it's moving things around. Well, if one of those gears is not moving, it is crawling. Well, now, even if the other gears are all like speeding up and working really hard to try and keep the thing going, it's not going to last long term.
Yeah.
All the parts need to be functioning in the purpose for which they're created. So really, do you understand what the role of a husband and what the role of a wife is, and have you had that discussion? Yeah. Because there are some core things that is always going to be the role of a husband, and is always going to be a role of a wife. But there's some other things tracing back to your culture and your values that you bring to the table that you're expecting in a husband and a wife. You know, you had this modeled for you all your life, and you expect a husband to do this and this and this. But the other person maybe didn't grow up with that. So they're not really, like, you're expecting this and this and this. Well, that's not part of what they grew up with. So it never even entered their mind to try and do that for you. So these are the things that you kind of need to talk about. What is my role and my function as a husband, as a wife, and is that going to meet your need? Yeah. So that you feel fulfilled and so that you're both working together as a machine that is accomplishing a goal together.
Yeah.
So that's definitely, and we're not talking about perfect, okay? Because nobody's perfect, but just is the other person. This is part of that darash, diligently searching. Are you finding someone who is at least committed to pulling their weight in the marriage covenant, functioning in their purpose as a husband, functioning in their purpose as a wife? It's having the true desire to make the marriage work, to make it function. And part of that really is when you mess up, and you're going to mess up, that you are recognizing when you're falling short of your purpose, owning it to your spouse, and fixing it by taking the necessary steps to either begin functioning in your purpose or to get back to functioning in your purpose if you stop for some reason.
Yeah.
Because you need to start doing that so the machine can work well.
Yeah.
And are you willing to bring that to the table? That's really the biggest thing that it takes is, are you willing?
Yeah. Do you have a willing heart to go ahead and serve somebody else? Do you have a willing heart to go ahead and do what God has said to go ahead and do for our spouses, for our spouse, for fellow humans? Do you have that heart to do so?
Yeah. And this is really getting back to the idea of inheritance. If you have children, and most folks do, part of their inheritance, and this is probably going to be the third or fourth time in this short video that we brought it up, so obviously we're trying to drive the point home. Part of the inheritance that you leave for them is the model and the example that you are giving them that is going to go with them the rest of their life.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a continual, going back to that word tamid that occurs 17 times in this Torah portion. It's going to be something that's continual, something that is going to continue to be operating in the background of their mind, is the example that you have provided for them of what a husband and a father, of what a wife and a mother, how they function together, as well as all the other things in your family, the way that you get them to interact with friends, with siblings, with people at your faith community, with pastors, with policemen. Oh my goodness, if you are talking negatively about policemen all the time, or about your governing authorities, if you're bringing them up like that, that is going to be a part of their inheritance from you. Yeah,
that's going to be their thoughts. They're gonna talk it out, and so it's a matter of, what do you say? How do you react? How do you bring them up?
Yeah. So what kind of inheritance do you want to leave behind? As Sarah said at the beginning, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind for your children, for the people in your community, for your siblings, for your friends, your impact?
Yeah.
What do you want your impact to be? That's a choice that we have to make every day. And let's do our best to choose well.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, I think that's all that we have for this little short video.
Awesome.
We probably could talk a lot more about it, but maybe for a future video on this same portion.
Yeah. A lot of good nuggets there, so just make sure that you subscribe. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us at hebrewshebrew.com, and we hope you guys have a great day. Bye.
Shalom.